Natasha here. Today I'm going to talk to you about financial aid and scholarships. We're first going to briefly talk about what financial aid is, and then we're going to look at both the FAFSA and the CSS Profile, two financial aid applications. Finally, we're going to briefly touch upon scholarships. First, before we go into financial aid, it's important to define the different costs that are associated with attending college. There are direct costs and indirect costs. Direct costs are typically what's on your bill that you get when you're attending college. So you might be tuition, any kind of mandatory fees, health services fees. These sometimes include a student activity fee, and then room and board, so your dorm and dining hall expenses. Indirect costs are things that might not be on the bill, but that you still need to budget for. So travel to the college, maybe you need a plane ticket or bus ticket to get there. Books for both semesters. Supplies, so notebooks, pens, whatever you might need in order to go to class. And then personal expenses. This could be everything from shampoo to pizza on a Friday night. There's a couple different types of financial aid. Grants are financial aid that you do not have to pay back. This usually comes in form of the Pell Grant from the government, and this is usually about a little bit over $6,000 if the student has a zero EFC, and we're going to talk a lot more about what that means later on in this presentation. Loans are money that you do have to pay back, and typically there is some kind of interest rate associated with the loan. Scholarships are free money, typically from the institution, the college itself, or outside foundations or nonprofit organizations. And then work study. Work study is a type of financial aid that you get from the federal government. And this is something where students will need to get a job on the campus in order to earn that money. So it's not automatically given to them. They do need to work to receive that money. Let's first talk about the FAFSA. So the FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid that every student will want to apply to in order to receive government funding. It's available at this website listed here, and students can start applying starting October 1st. It's important that students really fill that out as soon as possible. They'll use the tax information for the year prior. So they'll be using basically the taxes that their family had filed that previous spring. And so they already have that tax information that they can provide for the financial aid application. Now, the financial aid application will determine how much federal grant money they receive, state grants, any kind of federal direct loans, so that could be unsubsidized or subsidized loans, and work study money. The first step to completing the FAFSA is applying for FSAID. So both the student and the parent need to create an FSAID, and this is essentially the way that a student will be able to sign their FAFSA. They'll need to provide a name, date of birth, and social security number. Parents that do not have a social security number will not be able to apply for a PIN. Instead, they will need to actually print out the FAFSA, sign it, and mail it in. When starting to prepare for the FAFSA application, students should collect the following information. If they have an alien registration number or permanent resident card, if they're not a U.S. citizen, they'll need to have that on hand. A driver's license if they have one. And then social security number, financial aid or any kind of financial documents, federal income tax return from the year prior, like I mentioned, and then any kind of untaxed income records. So this could be Social Security, Medicaid, welfare, etc. Finally, they'll also need their most recent bank statement and most recent business and investment information if that applies. Who should apply for the FAFSA? You have to be a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, or refugee or asylee. There's also some humanitarian groups that are eligible to apply and some non-citizens. Any of the above whose parents are documented or undocumented can also apply. So if the student is a citizen but their parents are not, that student is still eligible for federal aid. So they can still apply for the FAFSA. Who should not file? Undocumented students should not file for financial aid through the FAFSA. DACA students should only apply if the school has directly requested that they fill it out. Who is the parent on the FAFSA? So people who cannot be a parent on the FAFSA include grandparents, foster parents, legal guardians, siblings, uncles, aunts, and family, friends, unless they have legally adopted the student. So the only person who can be a parent on the FAFSA is a biological or adoptive parent, and they must have legal documentation that shows that. A step parent can also be parent on the FAFSA if they're married to the biological or adoptive parent. After students submit the FAFSA, they will receive a student aid report in their email, also known as a SAR. Students should review that carefully to make sure all the information is correct. The SAR also contains your EFC, which stands for Estimated Family Contribution, and that number will determine the amount of financial aid you are eligible for. If you're selected for verification, so you'll be flagged and it will let you know that you're selected for verification, you must submit the required documents as soon as possible. The sooner you submit those, the sooner they'll be able to process your financial aid and you'll be able to start receiving financial aid packages from the colleges that you've applied to. Okay, so the CSS Profile is used by colleges and universities to determine institutional aid. Not every college will require this, and there's also some public schools that do require it. So I always recommend that students look at the full list of schools that require the CSS Profile to see if the colleges that they're applying to will require it. And you can find that full list by Googling CSS Profile schools that require it. Students can determine what they need to file by checking the list of the schools online, like I mentioned, and they should register at least 2 weeks before the earliest college or scholarship priority deadline. So it's important that students are looking at not just the application deadlines for the school, but also what is their financial aid deadlines. There is a cost to fill out the CSS Profile. It's $25, and each additional report is $16. However, students may be eligible for a fee waiver. If they were qualified for a fee waiver for their SAT or ACT and the Common App, then they will qualify for a fee waiver for the CSS Profile as well. Here's a list of scholarships that students might be interested in checking out. So the QuestBridge, Jack Kent Cook, Hispanic Scholarship Fund. Now, these are very selective scholarships, but I do encourage students who are competitive to apply for them. You can also look at a variety of different kinds of scholarships, the minority scholarships list at the bottom. Here are some of my favorite scholarship search engines. So students can use these to find all different types of scholarships that they qualify for. The Merit More one is interesting because it actually shows you which colleges you're applying to offer merit scholarships. Now, I always tell students, when you're looking at scholarships, there's going to be a lot that just have you put in your name, number, email address, and somehow you qualify for the scholarship. Those ones are kind of like winning the lottery. Everyone fills out the applications because they're so quick and easy that, that there's so many applications and it's really kind of against all odds that you'll get it. The ones that you might get, but it's more likely that you get, are the ones that require a little more work. So it is worth it to complete the essays and really spend the time on those applications. Often you can repurpose your essay and use it several times. So even though it's a little bit more work, those scholarships end up being a little bit easier to get because not as many students want to put in the effort to apply. Here's a couple additional resources that I use with students to look at eligibility for financial aid. So you can look at the College Affordability Calculator. So this will show you, exactly how much you can predict to pay for college. If you just Google the name of the school, Net Price Calculator, you'll be able to find it. It is actually required that every college has a net price calculator somewhere on their website. You'll need to answer a few questions about income, and then you'll be able to seek a prediction of how much you would pay to attend their college. It's important to recognize that it's just a prediction. It's not guaranteed, but it does give students an idea of which schools will be most affordable for them. You can also use the financial aid or the FAFSA forecaster to determine your financial aid eligibility for the FAFSA. That's all I have for you today. Thanks so much.